In the early 2000s, Nokia was the king of the mobile phone world. Millions of people trusted its devices, and its name was almost impossible to escape. But behind the success of this technology giant was a story that would become one of the biggest lessons in business history. How did the company that ruled the world accidentally lose everything? Welcome to the Iconic Arc.
In the early 2000s, one company ruled the mobile phone industry. Its name was everywhere. Millions of people around the world carried a Nokia phone in their pocket. Nokia was not just a phone company, it was a global giant. At its peak, Nokia controlled a massive part of the world's mobile phone market and seemed almost impossible to defeat. But just a few years later, the company that once defined the future of communication was fighting for survival. So what happened? How did the world's biggest phone company lose everything? This is the story of Nokia's rise, its mistakes, and the decisions that changed the future of technology forever. Long before Nokia became famous for mobile phones, it was something completely different. The story began in Finland in 1865, when a small paper mill was founded near Tampere. Nobody could have imagined that this company would one day connect billions of people around the world. Over the next century, Nokia transformed many times. It produced paper, rubber, cables, electronics, and other technologies before finding its future in telecommunications. Instead of staying in one industry, Nokia adapted to a changing world. By the late 20th century, the company saw a huge opportunity. Mobile phones were becoming smaller, cheaper, and more accessible. Nokia believed communication would no longer be limited to homes and offices. The future would be about connecting people anywhere, anytime. This vision transformed Nokia from a Finnish company into one of the most influential technology brands on Earth. By the late 1990s, Nokia had become more than a phone company. It had become a symbol of the future. Millions of people were experiencing mobile communication for the first time through Nokia devices. The phones were reliable, simple, and built to last. For many people around the world, their first mobile phone was a Nokia. Then came one of the most iconic phones in history, the Nokia 3310. Released in 2000, it became a cultural phenomenon. It was affordable, durable, and famous for its incredible battery life. But Nokia's success was not built on only one device. The company created an entire generation of phones that dominated markets around the world. From Europe to Asia, Nokia was everywhere. At its peak, Nokia became the world's largest mobile phone manufacturer, selling hundreds of millions of devices every year. Its brand was so powerful that many people believed Nokia would remain the leader forever. But history has shown that being number one can sometimes become dangerous, because when a company becomes too successful, it can stop noticing the changes happening around it. And while Nokia was celebrating its dominance, a new competitor was preparing to completely change what a phone could be. In January 2007, something happened that changed the future of mobile technology forever. On a stage in California, Steve Jobs introduced a device unlike anything people had seen before: a phone, an iPod, and an internet communicator, all in one. It was called the iPhone. At first, many people in the mobile industry were not impressed. Even Nokia, the world's biggest phone company, did not see it as an immediate threat. After all, Nokia had millions of customers, years of experience, and a powerful global brand. The company believed that a phone should be reliable, affordable, and practical, but Apple was thinking differently. Apple was not just creating a better phone, it was changing the definition of what a phone could be. The iPhone introduced a large touchscreen, a simple user experience, and an ecosystem where software became just as important as hardware. The competition was no longer only about building better devices. It became a battle over software, applications, and the entire experience around the phone. Nokia had spent years perfecting mobile hardware. Apple was trying to reinvent the smartphone itself. And for the first time in years, Nokia was no longer leading the conversation. But the iPhone was only the beginning. Nokia's biggest challenge was not Apple. It was how the company responded to a rapidly changing industry. For years, Nokia had been one of the most innovative technology companies in the world. But as smartphones evolved, the company struggled to move as quickly as the market. One of its biggest problems was Symbian, the operating system that powered millions of Nokia phones. Symbian had been successful for years, but smartphones were becoming something completely different. People no longer wanted just a device for calls and messages. They wanted powerful apps, smooth interfaces, and a connected digital experience. Symbian was built for an older generation of phones. It became harder for developers to create modern applications, and the experience started falling behind Apple's iOS and Google's Android. But software was only part of the problem. Inside Nokia, decision-making became slower and more complicated. The company had talented engineers, strong technology, and huge resources. But having great resources does not always mean having the right direction. Nokia was trying to protect the success of the past while competitors were building the future. By 2010, the smartphone market was changing faster than ever. Apple had created a new standard. Android was spreading quickly across different manufacturers, and Nokia faced one of the most important decisions in its history. What would be the future of its smartphones? Instead of adopting Android, Nokia chose a different path. The company partnered with Microsoft and selected Windows Phone as the future of its mobile business. The decision was ambitious. Microsoft had strong software experience, and Nokia had some of the best hardware engineers in the industry. Together, they hoped to create a third major competitor in the smartphone market. But there was one major problem. The smartphone war was no longer just about making a good phone. It was about building an ecosystem. Apple had the App Store. Android had millions of users and a growing developer community. Windows Phone was entering a battle where the biggest advantages were already controlled by its competitors. Consumers were choosing platforms, not just devices. And without enough apps, even great hardware struggled to succeed. Nokia's Lumia phones received praise for their design, cameras, and build quality, but the market had already started moving in another direction. The company that once created the mobile revolution was now trying to catch up with it. And by the time Nokia realized how much had changed, it was already running out of time. By the early 2000s, Nokia was no longer fighting to lead the market. It was fighting to survive. The company that once dominated mobile phones was losing customers at a rapid pace. Consumers were moving toward iPhones and Android devices. Samsung was rising quickly, and Nokia's position in the smartphone world became weaker every year. The Lumia series showed that Nokia could still create impressive hardware. The phones had beautiful designs, strong cameras, and excellent build quality. But great hardware was no longer enough. The smartphone industry had changed. The winners were the companies that controlled the entire experience: the operating system, the applications, and the ecosystem around the device. Nokia had once controlled the phone, but it no longer controlled the future of the smartphone. In 2013, after years of decline, Nokia made a decision that would have been unimaginable just a decade earlier. The company sold its mobile phone business to Microsoft. A business that had once represented Finland's greatest technology success was no longer part of Nokia. For millions of people around the world, Nokia represented their first connection to mobile technology. It was the company that introduced phones to entire generations. But even the biggest companies can fall when the world around them changes. Nokia did not fail because it lacked talented people. It did not fail because it stopped trying. It failed because the industry moved in a new direction, and Nokia was not able to move fast enough. The fall of Nokia became one of the biggest lessons in technology history. Being the biggest company in the world does not mean you will stay there forever. Nokia's story is not just a story about failure. It is a story about change. A company can have the best engineers, the strongest brand, and millions of loyal customers. But none of that guarantees success forever. Nokia was not destroyed overnight. Its downfall came from a series of decisions made while the world was changing faster than ever. The mobile phone was no longer just a device for calling people. It became a platform for software, applications, and digital experiences. Apple understood this shift. Google understood this shift. And eventually the entire industry followed. Nokia's biggest mistake was not creating bad products. It was believing that what made it successful in the past would be enough to win in the future. The same strengths that built Nokia's empire, its size, confidence, and success, slowly became weaknesses when the world started moving faster. But Nokia's story is also a reminder that failure does not erase greatness. The company